Today, across Canada, millions of seniors and working families are holding their breath. Because beneath the headlines about inflation, housing costs, and international politics, a crisis has been quietly building. A crisis that touches every Canadian household, whether you're retired today, planning to retire tomorrow, or just starting your career. We're talking about the future of the Canada Pension Plan and old age security. And the uncomfortable truth? The numbers may no longer add up. For decades, Canadians have trusted these programs as the bedrock of retirement security. The CPP, funded through contributions from workers and employers, and OAS, funded directly from government revenues, were designed to ensure that after a lifetime of work, no Canadian would face their final years in poverty. It was a social contract, a promise, almost sacred in its simplicity: you pay into the system, and when the time comes, the system takes care of you. But here's where the story turns. Because according to insiders, government analysts, and even former officials who rarely speak out, cracks in that foundation are widening. And while political leaders assure us that CPP and OAS are safe, the math tells a more complicated story. Let's start with the pressures. In 1970, there were nearly 7 workers contributing for every 1 retiree drawing benefits. Today, that ratio has collapsed to less than 3 to 1, and by 2035, projections suggest it could fall to just over 2. That means fewer workers paying in, while the number of Canadians drawing benefits explodes. Why? Because we are living longer, retiring earlier, and, frankly, expecting more. At the same time, costs are surging. Groceries that once cost $80 now ring in at $140. Average rents in cities like Toronto and Vancouver top $2,500 a month. Even modest retirement in smaller towns is becoming difficult. And prescription drug prices, an unavoidable expense for many seniors, have risen by more than 25% in the last decade. For someone living on a fixed income of $1,200 a month from CPP and OAS combined, these aren't abstract figures. They are the difference between paying the heating bill or filling a prescription. To make matters more pressing, Ottawa has quietly been wrestling with a series of uncomfortable decisions. Earlier this year, a policy paper circulated in closed-door meetings suggested that without reforms, OAS expenditures alone could exceed $100 billion annually by 2030, an amount that would consume nearly 1/5 of all federal spending. The CPP Investment Board, meanwhile, continues to assure Canadians that the fund is sustainable for the next 75 years. But critics point out that these projections rely on optimistic assumptions about growth, markets, and wages, assumptions that could falter in a world of economic instability. And that brings us to the human impact. Across the country, seniors are already feeling the pinch. Take Helen, a 72-year-old widow in Calgary. She worked as a nurse for 40 years, raised 2 children, and paid into the system faithfully. Today, her combined CPP and OAS payments barely cover her rent and utilities. She rations her groceries carefully, often skipping fresh fruit and meat because they've become luxuries. "I did everything right," she says, "and yet it feels like the system is slipping away from me." Or consider George and Anita, a couple in Windsor, Ontario. Both retired auto workers, their monthly CPP checks used to provide a sense of security. But with rising property taxes, skyrocketing insurance premiums, and their medication bill climbing to nearly $600 a month, they've started dipping into savings far earlier than planned. "We thought we had another 20 years of stability," George admits. "Now we're not sure we'll make it to 10. Supporters of the current system argue that alarmism only undermines confidence. They point to recent increases, like the government's 10% boost to OAS for those over 75, and inflation indexing on CPP benefits. These, they say, prove the system is adapting and remains one of the strongest in the world. But critics counter that such measures are temporary band-aids, not solutions. You can raise payments for a small group today, one economist warns, but unless you fix the core imbalance between what's being paid in and what's being paid out, the pressure will only get worse. The politics are just as complicated. Prime Minister Mark Carney has publicly reassured Canadians that CPP and OAS are safe, secure, and reliable. But behind those words is a growing debate inside Parliament. Should the government raise the eligibility age for OAS back to 67, as was once proposed? Should contributions to CPP increase again, reducing take-home pay for millions of workers? Or should benefits themselves be trimmed, something no government wants to admit, but which experts quietly acknowledge is on the table? And then there's the generational divide. Younger Canadians, many saddled with student debt, precarious jobs, and housing costs that dwarf their parents' mortgages, are asking if CPP and OAS will even exist for them. Some argue they're paying into a system they may never benefit from. For 28-year-old Matthew in Halifax, the math is simple. By the time I retire, he says, I doubt there'll be anything left. It feels like we're funding a system for today's retirees while our own future is ignored. All of this adds up to what experts are now quietly calling the silent pension crisis. It's not loud. It's not front-page news every day. But its impact is everywhere. On grocery receipts, on utility bills, on the anxious conversations families have about whether mom or dad can afford to stay in their own home. So where does this leave us? In the coming months, Ottawa is expected to release a new actuarial report on the long-term sustainability of CPP and OAS. It will be presented, as always, with reassurances and careful language. But already, whispers in the policy community suggest the numbers may be sobering, perhaps even historic. Will it confirm that the programs can withstand the storm? Or will it quietly signal the beginning of painful choices that every Canadian, young and old, will feel in their wallets and their futures? For now, the outcome remains uncertain. But what is clear is this: retirement security in Canada is no longer a guarantee taken for granted. It is a conversation we must have, a decision we must face together as a country. Because behind every statistic, every projection, are real people, seniors who built this nation, families who sacrifice today for tomorrow, and young workers wondering if the promise will still hold for them. And perhaps that's where the story ends, not in fear, but in resolve. If Canada chooses to act with foresight, fairness, and courage, the dignity of our seniors and the security of future generations can still be preserved. But if we look away, if we keep pretending the crisis isn't there, then the silence we hear today may one day become the shock of tomorrow. There's also the political gamble. Some premiers have argued that provinces like Alberta should consider taking their own path with CPP, carving out independent plans they claim would yield higher benefits. Supporters say this could protect workers from Ottawa's mismanagement. Detractors warn it would divide the system and undermine stability for all Canadians. For now, the debate is unresolved, but the very fact that it exists shows how deeply the trust in these programs has been shaken, and so the question lingers: how long can Ottawa hold the line? Will new funding models appear? Will Canadians accept higher payroll deductions, later retirement ages, or more aggressive government borrowing to sustain the promise? Or will the burden simply fall on the next generation, who may already feel stretched to the breaking point? Friends, this is not just a story about numbers. It's about dignity, fairness, and trust. The CPP and OAS crisis may be quiet, but it is shaping the future of every Canadian family. If you're a retiree, it's your livelihood. If you're a worker, it's your tomorrow. And if you're young, it's the foundation you're being asked to build for others, while wondering what will be left for you. We'll keep watching, questioning, and uncovering the truth. Because while officials may prefer silence, Canadians deserve clarity. If you found this report helpful, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the updates that could affect your retirement, your family, and your future. This story is still unfolding, and together, we'll keep digging until the answers are clear.